Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Future TV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Future Movement leader Saad Hariri heads to Jeddah to discuss the latest grant to Lebanese security forces with Saudi officials as Lebanese Army Commander General Jean Ahwazi makes a rare visit to Arsal. Syndicate Coordination Committee activists hold a general strike and a sit-in in Beirut, vowing to pressure MPs into approving the public sector wage scale. And Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki says it will take a federal court ruling for him to leave power, as France says it will deliver weapons to Kurdish forces fighting Islamist extremists in the country. Lebanese Army Commander General Jean Ahwazi has made a rare visit to Lebanon's border region, inspecting troops deployed in the Bekaa Valley town of Arsal following last week's gun battles with jihadists. Security sources say Ahwazi arrived by helicopter at the Lebanese Army barracks in Labwe amid strict security measures. From Labwe, he drove to nearby Arsal, where heavy fighting took place between the Lebanese Army and Islamist militants who overran the town early this month. More than 20 security personnel, including 10 soldiers, are missing and believed to be held hostage by the militants. Ahwazi has vowed that freeing the hostages was the Army's top priority. Future Movement leader Saad Hariri headed to Jeddah to discuss the latest grant to Lebanese security forces with Saudi officials. Meanwhile, reports say Hariri was expected to meet a delegation from the Syndicate Coordination Committee during the upcoming hours. It isn't clear when Hariri will return to Lebanon and if his visit to Jeddah will be short. Syndicate Coordination Committee activists have held a general strike and a sit-in in Beirut to pressure the MPs into approving the public sector wage scale. Head of the Private Schools Teachers Association, Nami Mahfouz, has vowed to continue the boycott of the official exams until Speaker Nabih Berri calls for a parliamentary session to approve the pay raise. Addressing dozens of protesters in Riyadh Suluh, he said the SEC emerged victorious a day after the committee struck a deal with Education Minister Lies Boussab to refrain from issuing passing certificates for at least 4 days. Boussab had threatened to issue the certificates for grade 12 and grade 9 students who sat for the official exam starting Wednesday. He later succumbed to the pressure of the SEC, a coalition of private and public school teachers and public sector employees, which held a protest at the Education Ministry yesterday. The March 14 General Secretariat has called for a campaign to demand the Lebanese cabinet to address the possibility of controlling the country's border with Syria. The March 14 alliance continuously called on the state to allow the UNIFIL to deploy along the Lebanese-Syrian border in accordance with Resolution 1701. However, it was met with complete objection. The resolution, which ended with Hezbollah-Israel war in 2006, expanded the mandate of UNIFIL in the south, which was originally formed in 1978 after the outbreak of Lebanon's 1975-1990 civil war. Following its weekly meeting, the General Secretariat also expressed solidarity with the Army and the Cabinet, praising the exerted efforts to ensure the safe release of security personnel who were taken captive by Islamist gunmen in Arsal. British Ambassador to Lebanon, Mr. Tom Fletcher, has met with Interior Minister Nuhad al-Mashnouk over security issues in Arsal. Fletcher reiterates his country's support in maintaining Lebanon's security and sovereignty.
I met the Interior Minister today for 3 reasons. Firstly, to underline our strong solidarity as Great Britain with the security agencies as they push back, as they tackle the extremist threat within Lebanon. Secondly, I wanted to stress that we will be with the Lebanese state as it seeks to bring back its people from captivity, those who have been taken hostage following the Arsal operation, including members of the ISF. And thirdly, we discussed the very practical ways in which in the coming weeks we will seek to support the effort to establish full Lebanese sovereignty and stability. We looked at very specific initiatives which the Minister is working on, and I am committed to ensuring that Britain is behind that effort. And in the coming weeks, we will be announcing that further support to his effort to better coordinate the security response. It is vital at this moment that we all work together in support of Lebanon's long-term sovereignty and stability, and to protect all the Lebanese people, Lebanese civilians, from the threat that is coming from the situation in the region. We in the UK, we in Britain are allies in that effort, and we are 100% committed to it. Thank you.
Électricité du Liban contract workers have closed the institution despite a claim by Energy Minister Arthur Nazarian that he was abiding by the law on their full-time employment. The workers also began erecting tents at the company's different branches, including its headquarters in Beirut's Mar Mikhail area, as part of their call for an open-ended sit-in. The workers are protesting a decision on the recruitment of only a portion of them. Nazarian told reporters that the decision referred to him by EDL Director General Kamal Al-Hayak to limit the number of employees who will be provided full-time jobs to 897 was legal. Parliament adopted a law in April under which all workers would undergo an exam to fill vacant posts. Those would pass would be upgraded. Negotiators in Cairo have addressed the issue of the Israeli-Gaza blockade as the clock ticks down to the 9 p.m. deadline that will end a current 72-hour truce. By that time, Israeli and Palestinian negotiators in the Egyptian capital must have either agreed on a permanent ceasefire, accepted an extension, or risk a resumption of more than a month of bloody fighting. As Gaza's residents ventured out into the quiet to try to piece together their battered lives, negotiators held a second round of indirect talks aimed at finding a durable end to the 5-week confrontation. A senior Israeli official told the AFP news agency there was still a long way to go to agree to an end to the conflict. And coming up next, former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak denies ordering the killing of protesters during the 2011 uprising. That and more after the break. Welcome back. Iraq's Prime Minister Nour al-Maliki says it will take a federal court ruling for him to leave power, defying the president's decision to task a rival with forming the next government. In his weekly televised address, Maliki said the appointment of Haider al-Abadi to replace him as prime minister was a violation of the constitution and had no value. The pronouncement comes as the UN said the world needed to do more for Iraqi civilians fleeing fighters from the Islamic State group. French President François Hollande also said France will deliver weapons to Kurdish forces fighting Islamist extremists in Iraq, whereas U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said Washington is looking at options to bring the trapped civilians out.
The people of Iraq and all of the Iraqi people need security, yet the poison of hatred and brutality is spreading. The so-called Islamic State, IS, is a threat to Iraq, Syria, and the region. I'm profoundly dismayed by its barbaric acts, including accounts of summary executions, boys forcibly taken from their homes to fight, girls abducted or trafficked as sex slaves. The plight of Yazidis and others on Mount Sinjar is especially harrowing. UN humanitarian personnel are in the area doing all what we can. Airdrops of food and water are reaching some of the trapped people. But the situation on the mountain is dire. And even when people manage to find a way out, they remain exposed to searing heat and perilous odyssey. I urge the international community to do even more to provide the protection they need. And I condemn in the strongest possible terms the systemic persecution of individuals from minority population and those who refuse the extremist ideology of IS and associated armed groups.
Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak in court has denied ordering the killing of protesters during the 2011 uprising that ended his 30-year rule. Mubarak was sentenced to life in prison last year after being convicted on the same charge, but an appeals court ordered a retrial. He was released from jail and is being kept under house arrest in a military hospital in Maadi, a Cairo suburb. The verdict is scheduled to be issued on September 27th. Mubarak, who is on trial with his sons and other senior officials, denied separate charges of corruption.
Security Council visit comes in a way as an emergency visit to this country to underscore to the leadership here just how important it is to follow through on the commitments made, to put together a transitional governing body in the run-up to elections. We will engage Riek Machar as well, probably tomorrow, and we will deliver a very tough message to him as well, that the international community will not tolerate violations of the cessation of hostilities, and that people who spoil the peace agreement, people who commit gross violations of human rights, must be held accountable.
The Security Council expresses its readiness to consider, in consultations with relevant parties, including IGAD and the African Union, all appropriate measures, including targeted sanctions, against those who take action that undermines the peace, stability and security of South Sudan, including those who prevent the implementation of these agreements. That is a very clear statement by all 15 members of the Security Council that there will be consequences for those who try to undermine agreements that are reached in the Addis Ababa talks.
And now for news around the world in brief, South Korea prepares to greet Pope Francis tomorrow, the first papal visit to the country in over 2 decades. The Pope is set to visit South Korea on a 5-day visit in which he will meet young Catholics, South Korea's political and religious leaders, as well as disabled people. A water main break caused a massive sinkhole to form in the parking lot of a tanning salon near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A parked car was swallowed by the sinkhole, but the driver, who was rescued by the salon's owner, managed to escape uninjured. Lauren Bacall, the last star of classic Hollywood and the sultry actress who captured Humphrey Bogart's heart, both on and off the movie screen, has died at the age of 89. She suffered a massive stroke. Well, speaking of Hollywood, officials say all evidence indicate that Hollywood star Robin Williams committed suicide as he tried to cut his wrist and hanged himself in a bedroom of his home in the San Francisco Bay Area after struggling with depression. Reports say his wife Susan Schneider likely was home at the time but was unaware. Williams was last seen alive by Schneider on Sunday night when she went to bed. She woke up the next morning and left thinking he was still asleep elsewhere in the house. Shortly after that, Williams' personal assistant became concerned when Williams failed to respond to knocks at the door. The assistant found the 63-year-old actor clothed and dead in a bedroom. A final ruling will be made once toxicology reports and interviews with witnesses are complete. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Future Movement leader Saad Hariri heads to Jeddah to discuss the latest grant to Lebanese security forces with Saudi officials as Lebanese Army Commander General Jean Ahwaji makes a rare visit to Arsal. Syndicate Coordination Committee activists hold a general strike and a sit-in in Beirut, vowing to pressure MPs into approving the public sector wage scale. And Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki says it will take a federal court ruling for him to leave power, as France says it will deliver weapons to Kurdish forces fighting Islamist extremists in the country. Those are your Wednesday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and I'll see you again tomorrow for more updates. Take care.